Michael leaned back in his chair, admiring the view from their luxurious home nestled on the outskirts of Los Angeles. The house, with its sprawling gardens and glass walls, was a dream he'd worked tirelessly to achieve. Every brick symbolized years of sacrifice and late nights building his real estate empire. His wife, Elena, had been by his side for a decade, their marriage seemingly unshakable. Recently, Elena had insisted on a Tesla. She claimed it was better for the environment and more suited to her lifestyle goals. Michael, always eager to please her, agreed without hesitation. Watching her beam as the sleek car arrived, he felt a familiar warmth. He'd done well for his family. But over time, something began to feel off. Elena had grown distant, her laughter feeling forced and her touch rare. She spent hours at the gym or on mysterious errands, her phone glued to her hand. Michael dismissed it at first, attributing it to stress. Yet a gnawing sense of unease started to creep in. One night, Michael overheard a phone conversation. Hidden behind the kitchen wall, he could hear Elena's muffled voice. "No, he doesn't suspect a thing. The papers will be ready soon. The house is practically mine." The words hit him like a freight train. His mind raced. Was she plotting to take everything they'd built together? He dismissed the thought as paranoia, but the next day he noticed legal documents on her desk. Among them, a draft for transferring the house's title solely to her name. His hands shook as he realized the gravity of the situation. The woman he trusted with his life might be betraying him in ways he couldn't yet fathom. Determined to uncover the truth, Michael began observing her every move. It wasn't long before he stumbled upon something far more devastating. Cleaning out the car one afternoon, he found a receipt for a clinic visit, a fertility clinic. Confused, he confronted Elena that evening. "What's this about a fertility clinic? I thought we agreed we weren't ready for kids yet." Elena froze, her face losing all color. "It was nothing, just a routine checkup," she replied too quickly. But Michael could see the lie in her eyes. Something was being hidden, something big. And it wasn't long before Michael uncovered it. A positive pregnancy test in her gym bag revealed a secret that changed everything. But the child she carried wasn't his. The ultimate betrayal was just beginning to unfold. Michael's hands trembled as he held the pregnancy test, his mind racing with questions. How could Elena have kept this from him? And more importantly, whose child was it? That night, he pretended everything was normal, though his chest burned with betrayal. Elena acted like nothing had happened, scrolling on her phone while Michael stared blankly at the television. But in his heart, he knew the truth wouldn't stay hidden for long. The next morning, Michael decided to investigate further. He checked their shared bank accounts and noticed unusual transfers, large sums being moved to an unknown account. He also found receipts for expensive gifts, none of which he'd seen in their home. Jewelry, luxury hotel stays, and spa bookings stood out glaringly. Someone else was reaping the rewards of his hard-earned money. Still, Michael needed proof. A name, a face, something to confirm the growing suspicion that gnawed at him. He hired a private investigator, a discreet man named Ryan, who promised results in days, not weeks. It didn't take long. Just 3 days later, Ryan handed Michael a file containing photos and records. In the pictures, Elena was smiling, her hand on the arm of another man, a man Michael recognized immediately. It was Daniel, his business partner and close friend of 10 years. They had built their company together from the ground up. Michael had trusted Daniel with his life, yet here he was, walking arm in arm with Elena, their smiles glowing in the sunlight. Michael's chest tightened as he flipped through the evidence. Receipts for dinners, trips, and even the fertility clinic. Daniel had accompanied her there. The baby she carried was his. Unable to hold back, Michael confronted Elena that evening. She was sitting in the living room, sipping wine, when he dropped the photos on the table in front of her. "Explain this," he said, his voice shaking with fury. Elena's face turned pale, her glass slipping from her hand and shattering on the floor. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her silence was confirmation enough. "You've been with him," Michael said, his voice colder now. "Daniel. My friend, the child you're carrying, it's his, isn't it?" Tears welled up in Elena's eyes, but Michael couldn't tell if they were from guilt or fear of being caught. I can explain," she stammered. "Explain?" Michael spat, his voice rising. You lied to me, plotted to take my house, and now you're having a child with the man I trusted most? What could you possibly say to make this better? Elena crumbled, her head in her hands. I never meant for you to find out this way. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she whispered. Michael's heart pounded as he realized just how far the betrayal went. But he wasn't done yet. He still needed one final piece of closure, a DNA test. And once he had it, he'd decide how to bring their world crashing down. Michael wasted no time. He ordered a home DNA testing kit, determined to uncover the truth. The days leading up to the results were torture. Elena avoided him, retreating into silence as though her guilt hung like a thick fog around her. Michael's anger simmered beneath the surface, but he kept his composure. He needed to play his cards right. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about justice. He wouldn't let Elena and Daniel walk away unscathed. When the results arrived, Michael opened the envelope with trembling hands. His breath caught as he read the lines confirming what he already suspected. The child was not his. It was Daniel's. The confirmation sent a fresh wave of fury coursing through him, but also a sense of clarity. Now he had proof, and he knew exactly what to do. Michael's first move was subtle. He reached out to Daniel's wife, Sophie. Sophie was sweet, trusting, and oblivious to the betrayal unraveling around her. Over coffee at a quiet cafe, Michael carefully laid out the evidence, including the DNA test results. Sophie's face turned ghostly pale, her hands shaking as she flipped through the damning photos and receipts. Tears brimmed in her eyes, but her shock quickly turned into determination. I won't let them get away with this, she whispered, her voice trembling. The two of them devised a plan, a calculated, deliberate takedown of their cheating spouses. It was no longer just about personal vengeance. It was about exposing the lies that had destroyed their lives. Michael began gathering more evidence. He unearthed Elena's secret account and traced her attempts to forge legal documents, transferring the house to her name. Sophie, meanwhile, uncovered Daniel's business misdeeds, fraudulent transactions that could land him in serious trouble. Once their case was airtight, they set their plan into motion. The first strike came at a high-profile charity gala. Daniel and Elena had planned to attend together, thinking they could flaunt their relationship in secrecy. But Michael and Sophie were 2 steps ahead. When Daniel and Elena arrived, arm in arm, Michael stood at the center of the room, microphone in hand. Sophie was beside him, holding a projector remote. The crowd of guests fell silent as the lights dimmed, and Michael's voice cut through the tension. Tonight, we celebrate honesty, integrity, and the values that bind us together. But what happens when those values are betrayed? Michael said, his voice steady but laced with venom. With a click, Sophie activated the projector, and the room erupted into gasps. Photos of Daniel and Elena together flashed on the screen, followed by bank statements, clinic receipts, and the damning DNA results. The silence was deafening as the truth laid bare for everyone to see. Daniel's face turned red with humiliation, while Elena's knees buckled beneath her. The crowd began murmuring, their whispers growing louder with every passing second. Michael locked eyes with Elena, his voice cold and firm. You thought you could take everything from me, but you forgot one thing. I built this life, and I'm not afraid to fight for it. As security escorted Daniel and Elena out of the venue, Sophie turned to Michael, her expression a mix of relief and gratitude. This is just the beginning, she said softly. Michael nodded, knowing she was right. The public exposure was only step one. The fallout was about to get even more intense. The scandal exploded like wildfire, spreading across social media and local news outlets. Videos of Michael's dramatic revelation at the gala went viral, turning him into an overnight sensation. The public ate up every detail: the betrayal, the DNA test, and the exposure of Daniel and Elena. Comments poured in, with most siding with Michael and Sophie, hailing them as heroes who stood against deception. Daniel, once a respected businessman, saw his world crumble. Clients began pulling out of deals, investors demanded explanations, and his name became synonymous with disgrace. His own company, the empire he had built alongside Michael, turned against him. The board, led by Michael, voted unanimously to remove Daniel from his position. Elena wasn't spared either. Friends distanced themselves, her social circles disintegrated, and she became the subject of relentless gossip. The luxurious lifestyle she had cherished began slipping through her fingers. The secret bank account she thought would secure her future was frozen after Michael exposed her fraudulent attempts to claim the house. But Michael wasn't finished yet. He wanted more than public humiliation. He wanted justice. He filed for divorce, armed with irrefutable evidence of Elena's infidelity and financial scheming. The case was airtight, and the judge showed no sympathy for Elena's actions. She was left with nothing, no house, no car, and no support. Meanwhile, Sophie moved swiftly to protect herself. She filed for divorce from Daniel, ensuring he wouldn't benefit from their shared assets. She also handed over evidence of his financial misdeeds to the authorities, resulting in an investigation that could lead to criminal charges. Despite the chaos, Michael found himself feeling lighter, as though a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. For the first time in years, he could see clearly. The betrayal had hurt deeply, but it had also opened his eyes to the toxic relationship he had been trapped in. One evening, as Michael sat alone in the now empty house, he reflected on everything that had happened. He thought about the years he had spent building a life with Elena, only to watch it unravel in the cruelest way possible. But instead of feeling anger, he felt a strange sense of peace. The phone buzzed, breaking his thoughts. It was Sophie. She wanted to thank him for standing by her side and to check in after everything. Their conversations had become a source of comfort for both of them, a reminder that they weren't alone in their pain. "How are you holding up?" Sophie asked softly. Michael smiled faintly, the first genuine smile in weeks. "Better than I expected. It's strange, isn't it? Sometimes it takes losing everything to realize what really matters." Sophie agreed. "Maybe this is our chance to start over, on our own terms." As they talked, Michael felt something unexpected, a flicker of hope. The fallout wasn't just an ending, it was the beginning of something new. And for the first time in a long while, he was ready to embrace it. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal proceedings, media attention, and personal reflection. Michael's divorce was finalized quickly, thanks to the mountain of evidence against Elena. The judge's ruling left no room for negotiation. Michael kept the house, the assets, and his dignity intact. Elena walked away with nothing but the consequences of her actions. For Daniel, the fallout was even worse. His fraudulent activities at work came to light, and he faced lawsuits from investors who had lost faith in him. The criminal investigation gained traction, and whispers of prison time loomed over his once powerful reputation. Sophie had severed ties completely, moving into a new apartment with her share of the assets and a renewed sense of independence. Michael began reclaiming his life, starting with his business. With Daniel out of the picture, Michael restructured the company, focusing on honesty and transparency. Clients who had distanced themselves returned, inspired by his resilience and integrity. The company thrived under his sole leadership, becoming stronger than ever. But it wasn't just his professional life that was rebuilding. Michael found himself opening up emotionally too. His conversations with Sophie grew more frequent and meaningful. They often reminisced about the betrayal they'd endured, but they also talked about their dreams, fears, and hopes for the future. One evening, Sophie invited Michael to her new place for dinner. It was simple, just pasta and wine, but it felt like a turning point. As they sat across from each other, laughing over shared memories and new beginnings, Michael realized how much he valued her presence. "You know," he said, swirling his wine glass, "I never thought I'd find peace after everything, but somehow, talking to you makes it easier." Sophie smiled, her eyes warm. "You've been my rock through this, Michael. I don't think I could have done it without you." The moment lingered, unspoken emotions passing between them. Neither dared to say it out loud, but they both felt it. A spark, a connection born from shared pain and newfound hope. As the days turned into weeks, Michael and Sophie began spending more time together, not out of necessity, but because they genuinely enjoyed each other's company. They attended charity events, went on long walks, and even started brainstorming business ideas together. Their bond deepened, not as two people seeking revenge, but as two souls finding solace in each other. For Michael, life no longer felt like a series of losses. It was a journey of rediscovery, filled with small victories and unexpected joys. And as he stood on the balcony one evening, watching the city lights twinkle in the distance. He realized something profound. Betrayal might have shattered his world, but it also cleared the way for something new, something better. And for the first time in years, Michael felt ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Months passed, and the chaos of the past began to fade into memory. Michael's life had transformed in ways he never imagined. His business flourished under his honest leadership, attracting new clients and partnerships. He became a beacon of resilience, a man who had faced the worst and emerged stronger. Sophie, too, was thriving. She had launched a nonprofit organization aimed at supporting individuals dealing with betrayal and heartbreak, offering counseling and legal resources. Michael supported her efforts, attending events and even sharing his story to inspire others. Together, they became symbols of hope for those seeking a fresh start. One evening, as they attended a charity gala hosted by Sophie's organization, Michael found himself reflecting on how far they'd come. The room buzzed with warmth and positivity, a stark contrast to the bitterness of the gala where their lives had unraveled. As the night wore on, Sophie stepped onto the stage to deliver a speech. She spoke passionately about strength, healing, and the importance of turning pain into purpose. Her words resonated deeply with Michael, who watched her with admiration and pride. After the event, as the crowd began to disperse, Sophie approached Michael with a smile. "Thank you for being here. It means a lot," she said softly. Michael took her hand, his gaze steady. "I wouldn't be anywhere else, Sophie. You've shown me what it means to rebuild, to find meaning after everything." They stood there for a moment, the noise of the crowd fading into the background. Michael knew this was a pivotal moment, the start of something truly meaningful. "I've been thinking," he began, his voice sincere. "Life threw us into a storm, but maybe it was meant to lead us here, to this moment. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want to face it with you." Sophie's eyes shimmered with emotion as she nodded. "I feel the same, Michael. Maybe this is our second chance, not just at life, but at love." Their journey hadn't been easy, but it had brought them to a place of understanding, connection, and hope. Together, they decided to embrace this new chapter, leaving behind the pain of the past and stepping into a future filled with possibility. As they walked out into the cool night air, hand in hand, Michael felt a profound sense of peace. Life had tested him, broken him, and rebuilt him. And now, with Sophie by his side, he was ready for whatever lay ahead. The stars above seemed to shine a little brighter, as if to mark the beginning of their new story. A story not of betrayal or revenge, but of love, resilience, and the power of starting over.